And I call the honourable member for Lawler.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, Deputy Speaker, the Administrative Appeals Tribunal was fatally compromised by the former government by appointing as many as 85 former Liberal MPs, failed Liberal candidates, former Liberal staffers and other close Liberal associates without any merit-based selection. They have undermined its independence and eroded the quality and efficiency of its decision-making. Let me just say that number again, 85 members. So we're not talking about the occasional blip on the radar, and we're not talking about something that wasn't known. I'm hopeful that with this legislation, the public will be able to rebuild their confidence in a new tribunal. And we've known that this has been an issue since at least 2019, when those sitting opposite now were in government. They commissioned a statutory review by the Honourable Ian Callanan ACKC, which made recommendations that they chose to ignore. And I thank the member for Indi, speaking previously, who raised that critical issue around robo-debt and what the ART is about. It is about a pair of eyes on government administration. And if decisions that were taken or recommendations made or decisions made by the AAT when those opposite were in government, thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of people would have been spared being accused of criminally defrauding the Commonwealth when in fact they had not. It's a significant reform that we're suggesting here, a necessary reform and a reform that underpins good government. And as I said, it's been a public issue since 2019. The Albanese Labor government announced that we would abolish the AAT on the 16th of December 2022. Went into consultation processes across April and May in 2023 and has had other parliamentary committees look at what would be the best way forward. Now, those opposite have come in here and argued that this seems a rushed process. Well, everything, Deputy Speaker, must seem rushed to those opposite, because even the best ideas they find a way to say no to oppose. Opposing good oversight of government administration doesn't seem a sensible response from any opposition. The public needs to know that we have a government the public can trust to make decisions. We need to have an independent body with oversight of our administration. And this impacts not one or two members of the public. The Administrative Appeals Tribunal, at the numbers that were presented and referenced in this place by speaker after speaker, in 2022-23, there were 41,037 lodgements in the AAT, 42,689 finalisations and 66,131 cases still on hand. These are 100,000 Australians who were at the AAT seeking clarification, seeking what they perceive to be justice over a government administration issue. These are not small things. These are pensioners in my electorate making queries about dealings with Centrelink. These are the hundreds of people in my electorate who were affected by the robo-debt notifications that they received that we now know are unlawful. These are thousands of people in my electorate who may be seeking support from the AAT in terms of a visa application or a spousal visa application. The AAT exists so that the public can have confidence in the government's administration. It is there to review individual decisions. It needs to be accessible to the public. It needs to be affordable for the public, and they need to have confidence that when they go into these processes, they will be heard by someone independent, someone credentialed to be looking at the issue, someone that they can trust to have their back and to have another set of eyes across what could be an administrative error by government. But instead, what we saw across the previous government's 9 years of tenure was a Liberal government finding jobs for their mates on salaries worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, I'm not going to stand here as a member of this parliament and say that former MPs should not be allowed to be appointed to an appeals tribunal, because some in this place are very well credentialed to do this work. In fact, there's a long history of some former MPs doing excellent work on the AAT. But when you're getting to the numbers of 85 former Liberal MPs, former Liberal candidates, and people with clear lines of being donors to the Liberal Party or even lobbyists, then we are in a state where the public have a right not to have confidence in the decisions that are being handed down. And for every single person, as every member of parliament here knows, if there's a bad news story about government, you can bet your bottom dollar that 10 times more people heard about it than the good story of government. And this government is working incredibly hard to build back public faith in government administration, in government decisions, and confidence that the Australian Commonwealth Government supports people's rights, the accessibility, the affordability of them to question a decision made if they see fit. We saw, under those opposite, a dysfunctional mess where people were waiting months, even years, for a review of a basic decision, a decision that often had significant ramifications on the lives of these Australians. Decisions such as whether an older Australian receives a pension, whether a veteran is compensated for a service injury, or whether a participant of the NDIS receives funding for an essential support. And I can say that in my electorate there have been many families who have sought an AAT ruling on an NDIS issue. These are real people, tens of thousands of people, and every single one of them deserves the best quality in administrative oversight. They deserve it, they expect it, and now they have a government that's bringing legislation into this place to deliver it. And I want to thank the member for Indi for the way that she has worked with the Attorney-General in this space. I want to thank her for the speech that she has just made and say to her that I agree that she should reserve her judgment until she is satisfied, because the people of Indi deserve that, as the people of every electorate in this country deserve to have their members in this place stand up for fairness, stand up for good governance, stand up for transparency, to ensure that we get this right. This is an opportunity to ensure that we never go back to the dark days of the last decade under those opposite, so that we can start to build back trust in government. We need a government that's prepared to do the hard work. We need an opposition that's prepared to join a government to put in place things that will better protect Australians and to support us to build back trust in government. We need a government that recognises when people are struggling and takes swift action to make necessary changes, and that is exactly what's happening in this case. Thoughtful, careful preparation, legislation in here, the debate continues, and we will land something as a government and start that process of building back trust. We've had to clean up a huge mess dumped on our doorstep by those opposite when we came to office, and we started fixing it immediately, because that's the Labor way. And that's why we're here today, to bring forward legislation that will restore confidence and trust in Australia's federal administrative review body by replacing the AAAT with the Administrative Review Tribunal. The design of the new body has been heavily informed by public consultation, as our government promised it would be. The new ART will be user-focused, not used to provide income for mates. It will be efficient, it will be accessible, independent, timely, fair and hopefully trusted. That is why an important feature of this new body will be a transparent and merit-based selection process for the appointment of non-judicial members. And this is critical. It is critical also for those existing members, those people who have done solid work over many, many years, that their reputations not be besmirched by what the former government did. It's absolutely critical that this legislation go through this parliament so that we can get on with delivering for everyday Australians. And I want to assure everyone that cases currently in hand when the AAT is abolished and replaced by the new body will be transferred across. And as others have referenced, there will also be a modernisation of the case management system to ensure that things are not stuck because of process or because of a lack of process, to make sure that things can move more quickly to an actual appeal. The former government's mismanagement of the amalgamation of the AAT and the Social Security Appeals Tribunal, the Migration Review Tribunal and the Refugee Review Tribunal is at the heart of the problems here. The former government cognated all of those tribunals into one tribunal, a tribunal that they then went on to undermine by not just by appointments, but by not taking the advice or not taking the implications of the cases that went before it that made a judgment against them in administration, as we saw in Robodebt. And we saw months and months and months and months of pain for Robodebt victims because the government even refused to listen to its own tribunal. That went on for far longer than it needed to go on. In fact, it needed ultimately for individual Australians to join together to go to the courts to get a decision. So the government oversaw the administrative oversight procedures for the Commonwealth. They saw it not only undermined, they ignored it. They saw it left to be perceived by the public as useless. And there isn't anything more damning that I can think of to say about the way the former government mismanaged this space. Now, the AAT has existed for a long time. It was established on 1st of July 1976, following reviews of the administrative decision-making that took place in 1971. There was a need for a mechanism for external review of government decisions that was accessible, informal and relatively affordable. It was necessary. The Whitlam government tried to bring this legislation in. It was eventually brought in by the Malcolm Fraser government. So it's a legacy that goes back for both of the major parties as something that we would both, I assume, say that we are proud of. So I encourage those opposite today to support this bill in the House so that good governance can be trusted by the Australian public, so that members in my electorate and the electorates around the country, members of my community, believe that if there is a decision made, that they have a right of appeal to a trusted source where they will get a fair go. It's pretty simple. For the life of me, I cannot understand why anyone in this House would oppose this legislation. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.